rules. If it's something that I want to wear, I wear it. A friend told me, you're not supposed to wear diamonds during the daytimes, and I heartily agreed with her until I got some. One by one, though, my siblings started going west to Leadville, Colorado, to the silver mines. So when I was 19, I packed my bag and I went out west too. My goal wasn't silver, though. It was gold, as in a wedding ring. I was going to marry a rich man. That was my goal. I was young, I was pretty. Well, why not? So almost overnight, we became millionaires. I married a poor man, here I was rich. Now, when you have a lot of money, you have an obligation. You have to spend it. I became involved also with the suffrage movement, was the suffrage representative from the state of Colorado. And I have a little 43-room cottage in Newport, Rhode Island, that I became involved with many of the elite there in the suffrage movement. She and I planned the Conference for Great Women. They encouraged me to run again. So I ran for the United States Senate one more time in 1914. It was a few minutes before midnight, about 20 minutes till or so. I heard a loud crash. And I was thrown out of my bed onto the floor. Well, this had never happened to me in any of my other excursions on the ships I do. I went back in, I took off my pajamas, and I put on the warmest clothing I had, a black velvet two-piece, a top and skirt. Then I put on 7 pairs of socks, one over the other. I reached into my safe and I got out $500 in cash and put them into a pouch, which were under my clothes. And then I thought, oh yes, a sable. I had a sable JJ had given to me, and I wrapped it around my shoulders. I grabbed a blanket, and at the last minute I thought, I'm going to get that little talisman. I had bought in Egypt this tiny little turquoise idol that I thought was a good luck piece, so I stuck it in my pocket. But this one, the second officer light hauler, I heard him saying, women and children only, trying to get women and children into the lifeboats. So I went around and started telling women, yes, you need to get on, and I would help them along to go. And then I thought, I'm going to see what's happening on the other side of the ship. So I started to go around, and just about that time, 2 men grabbed me by the elbows and threw me into lifeboat number 6. I fell about 4 feet. So we were there, teeter-tottering back and forth as the boat was going down. We thought it was a drill. That's why many people didn't want to get in the boat. They said it's more comfortable here on the ship. We'll go out and then they'll just come back in, so we might as well just stay here. As we were being lowered, I saw a big gash in the side of the boat with water pouring out of it. I picked up the oar and I pushed against the ship to keep us from getting waterlogged and soaked and not being able to bail it out in time that we would be lost. We hit the bottom. We looked up and saw Captain Smith, and he was saying, go towards the light. There was a ship out there he wanted us to go towards. And stay together. Those were his words to us. So we started, and just the men were rowing. I said, everyone needs to row. So I told them how to put them and showed them how to put the oars in. And the women and I, we started rowing. And then Hitchens started telling us to go faster, 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 because he said that the suction was going to pull us under when the ship went down. We went a ways, and he said, stop, I hear the captain. He's saying, come back to the ship. And we said, man, you're crazy. The captain didn't say anything at all. He said to keep going towards the light. He said, okay, all right, we'll keep going then. A little farther along, he said, there's a buoy. You know those channel markers? Why in the world would they have a buoy in the middle of the Atlantic? The man was nuts. He started talking doom and gloom from the time we got in that boat. We're all going to die. There's no water. There's no food. We don't have a compass. We're all doomed. We met up with another boat. number 16. We lashed them together and a stoker came over into ours. The poor man, he just had a thin sweater on and short pants. So I took my sable and I wrapped it around his waist, down over his legs, and tied it at his ankles. By this time, I had given away 6 of my 7 pairs of socks to others who needed them. And we all turned towards the ship. I tried to look away, but my eyes were compelled to witness this event. We heard a loud noise as the boilers broke away and everything from one side went to the other. And it was like big arms reached up with foam and grabbed the Titanic and pulled it down. We heard men, women, and children in the waters crying for us to go back and help them. And we tried to get Hitchin to turn the rudder to let us go back, but he refused. He said that the boat would be swamped and we would all die. Many of us in the boat begged him to do that. I confronted him at one point and I told him I was going to throw him in. I was held back, or I would have. The stoker told him as he swore at me, not the stoker, Hitchens. He says, "Don't you know you're talking to a lady?" He says, "I know who I'm talking to, and I'm in control of this boat, and you will do what I say." It wasn't long before we heard no more voices. We continued rowing through the night, smelling this acrid smell like from the inside of a cave. And then, off in the distance, someone said they saw a light. Was it lightning? What was it? Oh, it's just a shooting star, a falling star, Hitchens said. And then we heard a man's voice. Frederick Fleet, the lookout. We didn't even realize he was a man because he had a quilt wrapped around him to keep warm. He said, "That's the Carpathia." And one of the others said, "She's a good ship. She's here to save us." And Hitchens said, "Oh no, she's just here to pick up the stiffs. She's not going to save us." We saw as the lights were coming from the sun. It was the night before. It had been very calm. No moon, just the stars. But now the waters were roiling. The waves were crashing, and we could see the other lifeboats as they were trying to approach the Carpathia. It took us 3 tries of bumping into the ship and being knocked off like a rubber ball until we were finally able to grab the ropes. They let down 2 ropes that were split and a plank that was 3 feet wide and 1 foot deep. And they made a swing out of that, kind of a Jacob's ladder. And one by one, they pulled us up onto the Carpathia, where arms were waiting to hug us, to hold us, to warm us. They immediately gave everyone coffee and dry clothes. I started organizing everyone, finding out what their name was, where they were from, where they were going, if they had a sponsor, anything possible I could know about them, and keeping track of that. There were so many women from 2nd and 3rd class, mainly the 3rd class, the steerage, who had lost their husbands, the breadwinner. They had left with everything they owned on the ship, and now it was all gone. What were they to do? How were they to continue on? I listened to their stories, which relieved them a lot. The following day, we organized a committee, a survivors committee. I was elected the president, a post I hold even to this day. And I started raising funds for these poor women who had nothing. I encountered 2 of the first-class women out on the deck, and I asked them to contribute to it. They said, "Why should we worry about them? We will be at the Waldorf, and you're going to be at the Ritz-Carlton, so let's not even consider helping in any way. They can take care of themselves." Well, I started posting a list and the amount given of each person right next to the grand staircase. It wasn't long before those ladies' names were added to the list. Madeline Astor gave $2,000, so I collected $10,000 before we even reached the port there in New York City. I was so glad that my daughter Helen had not come with me on the ship, that she had gone on to Paris and London with her friends. But when we look back at that ship as it was being pulled under, each one of us thought of some loved one and called out their names. My friend, Emma, Dr. Brew. Emma was on the ship, Dr. Brew had perished. There were reporters in the water with megaphones yelling out, wanting to pay for stories. One even got on board the Carpathia. He was promptly arrested and put in the brig. I stayed on that ship until I knew that every single person had somewhere to go, whether it be a friend, a family member, their embassy. So I stayed there for another day to make sure that all of them were in a place where they would be taken care of. All I had was the clothes on my back, and they were pretty ruined, so had to get a few new clothes, of course, before I could leave and go home to Denver. My brother Daniel accompanied me, and I had offered to testify for the Senate hearings that they were conducting in New York, but they, of course, didn't want to hear what I had to say. The newspapers did. And I said that I held not only Captain Smith, but Bruce Ismay personally responsible for this tragedy, because he was trying to get back to New York to attend a dinner party. That's why they were going so fast. The reporters asked me how I felt about my role in the Titanic, and I said, well, I knew I was young and healthy, and I felt that I could help some, especially since I could speak so many foreign languages. That was a great help in communicating to these people. The fact that I did help some, I'm glad. I only wish I could have done more.